just wish he knew. I just wish he knew.
I can smell the pain, he says. Amazing. Just amazing. Welcome in, welcome in. We're just doing a chill stream today. I figured I'd last second that fucking thumbnail like a champion. Ha! Ha ha! Ah, shit. Yeah, we're gonna be talking about some random shit today. None of which are really related at all. In any way, shape, or form. But historical nonetheless. And educational and entertaining nonetheless. Nonetheless. It's been raining here and the lack of sun this year has throttled you? Yeah. I mean, I have had no lack of sun this year. It's been fucking humid. I can't stand the humidity. It drives me fucking nuts. Same thing with allergies. I have like the worst allergies on the planet. Any grass pollen just completely obliterated. It is fucking terrible. That's why I'm moving to the desert. Love it in the desert. There's no grass. It's all just rocks. Let's fucking go. Trudeau survived the first no confidence motion, sadly. Yeah, that's fucking unfortunate. You know, had we just defeated the British and and Canada was just a part of the United States, then none of this would be happening. You'd be dealing with the same problems we are. And yet, here you are stuck with Trudeau. Fuck. How we failed you, Canada. How we failed you. How we failed you. Ha ha! But instead of talking about shitty dudes, let's talk about a couple of amazing ones, like this guy. Good old G-dubs. George Washington. If the Upper Canada Rebellion had worked, no kidding. George fucking Washington. Speaking of America, its fucking father. Born February 22nd, 1732. And died December 14th, 1799. Was an American founding father, politician, military officer, and farmer who served as the first president of the United States from 1789 to 1797. Appointed by the Second Continental Congress as commander of the Continental Army in 1775, Washington led the Patriot forces to victory in the American Revolutionary War and then served as president of the Constitutional Convention in 1787, which drafted the current Constitution of the United States. Washington thus became commonly known as the father of his country. Ah, yes. Good old Washington. Good old Eorg Washington. Washington's first public office from 1749 to 1750 was as surveyor of the Culpeper County in colony of Virginia. Yep, Culpeper County. I've been there twice. Driving through. In 1752, he received military training and was granted the rank of major in the Virginia Regiment. During the French and Indian War, Washington was promoted to lieutenant colonel in 1754 and subsequently became head of the Virginia Regiment in 1755. He was later elected to the Virginia House of Burgesses and was named a delegate to the Continental Congress in Philadelphia, which appointed him Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. Washington led American forces to a decisive victory over the British in the Revolutionary War, leading the British to sign the Treaty of Paris, which acknowledged the sovereignty and independence of the United States. He resigned his commission in 1783 after the conclusion of the Revolutionary War. Like a champ. This dude was not in it for the power, right? I would say he wanted to make a name for himself more than be like king or emperor, because he very well could have been. You know what I mean? Like, dude could have just usurped all of the power. He had all of the support by literally everybody. Holy shit. Washington played an indispensable role in adopting and ratifying the Constitution, which replaced the Articles of Confederation of 1789. He was then twice elected president unanimously by the Electoral College in 1788 and 1792. I do believe he's the only president in U.S. history that was elected unanimously by the Electoral College. I could be wrong, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure. As the first U.S. president, Washington implemented a strong, well-financed national government while remaining impartial in a fierce rivalry that emerged between cabinet members Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. During the French Revolution, he proclaimed a policy of neutrality while additionally sanctioning the Jay Treaty. He set enduring precedents for the office of president, including republicanism, a peaceful transfer of power, the use of the title Mr. President, and the two-term tradition. His 1796 farewell address became a preeminent statement on republicanism in which he wrote about the importance of national duty and the dangers that regionalism, partisanship, and foreign influence pose to it. Just throwing that out there. Fuck. It's a lot of what we talk about on this fucking channel. This is why I thought it was relevant and wanted to go over it. Was there even other candidates at the time? Yeah, there was a couple of other candidates. I mean, Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton were two other people that were kind of like, hey, you know what I mean? Washington's image as an icon of American culture, he has been memorialized by monuments, a federal holiday, various media depictions, geographical locations including the national capital, the state of Washington, stamps, and currency. In 1976, Washington was posthumously promoted to the... What? I think that they meant 17. I'm going to disregard that. Washington constantly ranks in both popular and scholarly polls as one of the greatest presidents in American history. Early life. George Washington was born on February 22nd, 1732, at Pope's Creek in Westmoreland County, Virginia. He was the first of 6 children of Augustine and Mary Bell Washington. Oh, okay. Listen, that was a dyslexic moment back there. We're just gonna forget that that even happened. It's a battle sometimes, reading. It really is. But whatever, I do it all the time. Who cares? His father was a justice of peace and a prominent public figure who had 4 additional children from his first marriage to Jane Butler. The family moved to Little Hunting Creek in 1734 before eventually settling in Ferry Farm near Fredericksburg, Virginia. When Augustine died in 1743, Washington inherited Ferry Farm and 10 slaves. His older brother Lawrence inherited Little Hunting Creek and renamed it Mount Vernon. I'm pretty sure Washington was like 11 when his dad died. Washington did not have a formal education. His elder brother received at Appleby Grammar School in England, but he did attend the lower church school in Hartfield. He learned mathematics, including trigonometry and land surveying, and became talented draftsman and mapmaker. So this fool was learning trigonometry before he was fucking, like, 10 years old. What the hell? By early adulthood, like, this is how our schools have failed us. Just throwing that out there. He learned mathematics, including trigonometry and land surveying. The fuck? By early adulthood, he was writing with considerable force and precision. As a teenager, to practice penmanship, Washington compiled over 100 rules for social interaction, styled rules of civility and decent behavior in company and conversation, copied from the English translation of a French book of manners. Washington often visited Mount Vernon and Belvoir, the plantation of William Fairfax, Lawrence's father-in-law. Fairfax became Washington's patron and surrogate father. In 1748, Washington spent a month with the team surveying Fairfax's Shenandoah Valley property. The following year, he received a surveyor's license from the College of William Mary. Even though Washington had not served the customary apprenticeship, Thomas Fairfax appointed him surveyor of Culpeper County, Virginia, where he took his oath of office on July 20th, 1749. He subsequently familiarized himself with the frontier region, and though he resigned from the job in 1750, he continued to do surveys west of the Blue Ridge Mountains. By 1752, he had bought almost 1,500 acres in the valley and owned 2,315 acres. Damn. In 1751, Washington left mainland North America for the first and only time when he accompanied Lawrence Barbados, hoping the climate would cure his brother's tuberculosis. Washington contracted smallpox during that trip, which left his face slightly scarred. Lawrence died in 1752, and Washington leased Mount Vernon from his widow Anne. He inherited outright after her death in 1761. Lawrence Washington's service as Adjutant General of the Virginia military inspired George to seek commission. Virginia Lieutenant Governor Robert Dinwiddie. Okay, so if they're not hard to pronounce, they're just outright ridiculous. Robert Dinwiddie, all right, appointed Washington as a major and commander of one of the 4 militia districts. The British and French were competing for control of the Ohio Valley. The British were constructing forts along the Ohio River, and the French between the Ohio River and Lake Erie. In October 1753, Dinwiddie appointed Washington as special envoy. He had sent Washington to demand French forces to vacate the land that was claimed by the British. Washington was also appointed to make peace with the Iroquois Confederacy and to gather further intelligence about French forces. Washington met with Half-King Tanacharson and other Iroquois chiefs at Logstown and gathered information about the numbers and locations of French forts, as well as intelligence concerning individuals taken prisoner by the French. Washington was nicknamed Conotocarius by Tanacharson, the name meaning devourer of villages, had been given to his great-grandfather, John Washington, in the late 17th century by Susquehannock. Damn. Alright, Native American names getting a little difficult. Not gonna lie. Washington's party reached the Ohio River in November 1753 and was intercepted by a French patrol. The party was escorted to Fort Le Boeuf, where Washington received in a friendly manner. he delivered the British demand to vacate the French commander Saint Pierre. But the French refused to leave. Saint Pierre gave Washington his official answer after a few days' delay, as well as food and winter clothing for his party's journey back to Virginia. What a nice guy. Washington completed his precarious mission in 77 days in difficult winter conditions, achieving a measure of distinction when his report was published in Virginia and London. They were like, dang, dude trekked through the winter? What a crazy guy. And he made it? Legend. Engine names. Yep. Them engine names, man, I'm gonna tell you. Them are some hard names to pronunciate. Okay? In February 1754, Dinwiddie, that name again, promoted Washington to lieutenant colonel and second in command of the 300-strong Virginia Regiment. With orders to confront French forces at the Forks of Ohio, Washington set out with half the regiment, and in April soon learned a French force of 1,000 begun to construct a Fort Duquesne. I'm going to go ahead and guess there. In May, having set up a defensive position at Great Meadows, he learned that the French had made camp 7 miles away. He decided to take the offensive. The French detachment proved only about 50 men, so Washington advanced on May 28th with a small force of Virginian and Indian allies to ambush them. During the ambush, French forces were killed outright with muskets and hatchets. French forces were killed outright with muskets and hatchets, including French commander Joseph Coulon de Jumonville, who had been carrying a diplomatic message for the British. The French later found their countrymen dead and scalped, blaming Washington, who had retreated to Fort Necessity. All right, well, it's getting interesting, Shane. There you go. The full Virginia regiment joined Washington at Fort Necessity with the following month with news that he had been promoted to command of the regiment and colonel upon the regimental commander's death. The regiment was reinforced by an independent company of 100 South Carolinians led by Captain James McKay. His royal commission outranked Washington's, and a conflict of command ensued. On July 3rd, a French force attacked with 900 men, and the ensuing battle ended in Washington's surrender. He signed a surrender document in which he unwittingly took responsibility for assassinating Jumonville, later blaming the translator for not properly translating it. Damn it, coerced into taking responsibility. I mean, what are you gonna do? In the aftermath, Colonel James Ennis took command of the Intercontinental Forces. The Virginia Regiment was divided, and Washington was offered a captaincy in one of the newly formed regiments. Let me turn this so it's easier to read and not slanted. He refused, however, as it would have been a demotion, instead of resigned his commission. Damn it. He's like, fuck you, you're not demoting me. Like, the Jumonville affair became the incident in which ignited the French and Indian War, later to become part of the 7 Years' War. Dang. In 1755, Washington served voluntarily as an aide to General Edward Braddock, who led a British expedition to expel the French from Fort Duquesne and the Ohio country. On Washington's recommendations, Braddock split the army into one main column and a lightly equipped flying column. Suffering from severe dysentery, Washington was left behind, and when he rejoined Braddock at Monongahela, the French and their Indian allies ambushed the divided army. So are they at war or are they allies? The French and the Indians, man, I'm telling you. First off. Second off, man, late 1700s, early 1800s dysentery must have been a bitch. I tell you. War crimes are bust. Yes. 2/3 of the British force became casualties, including the mortally wounded Braddock under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Gage. Washington, still very ill, rallied the survivors and formed a rear guard, allowing his remnants of the force to disengage and retreat. During the engagement, he had 2 horses shot from under him, and his hat and coat were bullet-pierced. His conduct under fire redeemed his reputation among critics of his command in the Battle of Fort Necessity. But he was not included by the succeeding commander, Colonel Thomas Dunbar, in planning subsequent operations. Damn it. The Virginia Regiment was reconstituted in August 1755, and Dinwiddie appointed... I'm going to emphasize it every time. Dinwiddie. Ha ha! Appointed Washington its commander, again with the rank of colonel. Washington clashed over seniority almost immediately, this time with John Dagworthy, another captain of superior royal rank who commanded a detachment of Marylanders. At the regiment, headquarters in Fort Cumberland. Dysentery, the bane of Oregon Trail players everywhere. Not even kidding. If Oregon Trail has taught me anything, yes, dysentery sucks. Not even kidding. Shoot, I just saw you were live. Couldn't have actually been here for some of it. Oh, man. Well, that's all right. You can always go back and watch it, or catch me next time. I'm live at the same time, usually. Right around 12:30, in between 12:30 and 1 a.m. Central Standard Time, pretty much every time. Washington, impatient for an offensive against Fort Duquesne, was convinced Braddock would have granted him a royal commission and pressed his case in February 1756 with Braddock's successor as commander-in-chief, William Shirley, and again in January 1757 with Shirley's successor, Lord Loudoun, or Loudoun. I don't know. Shirley ruled in Washington's favor only in the matter of Dagworthy. Loudoun humiliated Washington, refused him a royal commission, and agreed only to relieve him of the responsibility of manning Fort Cumberland. Dick. In 1758, Virginia Regiment was assigned to the British Forbes expedition to capture Fort Duquesne. Washington disagreed with General Forbes' tactics and chosen route. Forbes, nevertheless, made Washington a brevet brigadier general and gave him command of one of the 3 brigades that would assault the fort. The French had abandoned the fort and the valley before the assault, however, and Washington only saw a friendly fire incident, which left 14 dead and 26 injured. Frustrated, he resigned his commission soon afterwards and returned to Mount Vernon. Yep, probably pissed. I'd be pissed too. I'd be like, dude, really? I fucking told you guys this was gonna happen. He tried to disagree, and they kept telling him F you every time he tried to make a statement. The British and they're uptight. No, it will go as I say. If I don't say it, it won't happen. So bloody fuck off. Under Washington, the Virginia Regiment had defended 300 miles of frontier against 20 Indian attacks in 10 months. He increased the professionalism of the regiment as it grew from 300 to 1,000 men, and Virginia's frontier population suffered less than other colonies. Though he failed to realize a real commission, he gained self-confidence, leadership skills, and a knowledge of British military tactics. The destructive competition Washington witnessed among colonial politicians fostered his later support of a strong central government. On January 6, 1759, Washington, at the age of 26, married Martha Dandridge Custis, the 27-year-old widow of a wealthy plantation owner, Daniel Park Custis. The marriage took place at Martha's estate. She was intelligent, gracious, and experienced in manning a planter's estate, and the couple had a happy marriage. They moved to Mount Vernon, near Alexandria, where he lived as a planter of tobacco and wheat, and emerged as a political figure. My stream makes it hard for you to be in stream. It's always around your bedtime? Yeah, I feel that. That's alright. That's alright. I feel that. Some people gotta go to bed, and I understand. But thanks for stopping in, Kyle. You're a legend. I mean, seriously. But you're not obligated to stay up and watch my stream by any means. I do appreciate it, but you're not obligated, right? Washington's 1751 bout with smallpox is thought to have rendered him sterile, though it is equally likely that Martha may have sustained injury during the birth of Patsy, her final child, making additional births impossible. The couple lamented not having any children together. Despite this, the two raised Martha's two children, John Park Curtis, Jackie, and Martha Park Curtis, Patsy, under later Jackie's two youngest children, Eleanor Park Curtis, Nellie, and George Washington Park Curtis, Washi, along with numerous nieces and nephews. Well, all right then. The marriage gave Washington control over Martha's 1/3 dower interest in the 18,000-acre Custis estate. And he managed the remaining 2/3 for Martha's children. The estate also included 84 slaves. As a result, he became one of the wealthiest men in Virginia, which increased his social standing. At Washington's urging, Governor Lord Boterow fulfilled Dinwiddle's 1754 promise of land bounties to all volunteer militia during the French and Indian War. In late 1770, Washington inspected the lands in Ohio and Great Kanawha regions and engaged surveyor William Crawford to subdivide it. Crawford allotted 23,200 acres to Washington. Washington told the veterans that their land was hilly and unsuitable for farming, and he agreed to purchase 20,147 acres, leaving some feeling that they had been duped. Yep. Tobacco was money back in the day. Yeah, it was. Fuck yeah. I could imagine. Shit. Well, at least I was there to stop by and drop a like and a share. Have a great stream. Thanks, Kyle. You're a legend. You're a fucking legend. I appreciate it. I really, really do. But goddamn, that's a lot of land. He also doubled the size of Mount Vernon to 6,500 acres, and by 1775 had increased its slave population by more than 100. Well, if I'm not mistaken, he upon his death, he emancipated all his slaves were emancipated, and they were pretty well taken care of. And he wasn't too big on having slaves. Wasn't all happy about it, especially towards the end of his life. Had some moral issues with it. As a respected military hero and large landowner, Washington held local offices and was elected to Virginia provincial legislature, representing Frederick County in the House of Burgesses for 7 years beginning in 1758. He first ran for seat in 1755, but was soundly beaten by Hugh West. Damn it. Damn you, Hugh. When he ran in 1758, Washington plied voters with beer, brandy, and other beverages. Despite being away serving on the Forbes expedition, he won the election with roughly 40% of the vote, defeating 3 opponents with the help of local supporters. Early in his legislative career, Washington rarely spoke or even attended legislative sessions. He would later become prominent critic of Britain's taxation policy and mercantilist policies towards the American colonies, and became more politically active starting in the 1760s. Lurking on your PC? Thanks. Fuck yeah. Washington imported luxuries and other goods from England, paying for them by exporting tobacco. His profligate spending, combined with low tobacco prices, left him 1,800 euros in debt by 1764. Or pounds. I think that's pounds. 1,800 pounds. Shit. 1,800 pounds. Yeah, it's pounds. That is the money sign for pounds. Fuck. Prompting him to diversify his holdings. In 1765, because of erosion and other soil problems, he changed Mount Vernon's primary cash crop from tobacco to wheat, and expanded operations to include corn, flour milling, and fishing. Washington soon counted among the political and social elite in Virginia. From 1768 to 1775, he invited some 2,000 guests to Mount Vernon, mostly those whom he considered people of rank, and was known to be exceptionally cordial towards guests. Washington also took his time for leisure with fox hunting, fishing, dances, theater, cards, backgammon, and billiards. They had fucking billiards back in fucking day, man? What the hell? How old is billiards? I didn't fucking know they had billiards back in the 70s. What the hell? How the fuck old is billiards? Oh my god, that makes me want to fucking look that up now. We're not doing a rabbit hole, damn it. Roughly $500,000 in debt in today's money? Yeah. Washington's stepdaughter, Patsy, suffered from epileptic attacks from age 12, and she died at Mount Vernon in 1773. The following day, he wrote to Burwell Bassett, It is easier to conceive than to describe the distress of this family. He canceled all business activity and remained with Martha every night for 3 months. Dang. Washington played a central role before and during the American Revolution. His distrust of British military had begun when he was passed over for promotion into the regular army. Opposed to taxes imposed by the British Parliament on the colonies without proper representation, he and other colonists were also angered by the Royal Proclamation of 1763, which banned American settlement west of the Allegheny Mountains and protected the British fur trade. Allegheny. 14th century for billiards invention. No shit. That's fucking interesting. Random facts. There you go. Billiards was invented in the 14th century. That is random fact of the day. Thanks for that. Washington believed the Stamp Act 1765 was an act of oppression and celebrated its repeal in the following year. In March 1766, Parliament passed the Declaratory Act, asserting that parliamentary law superseded colonial law. In the late 1760s, the interference of the British Crown in American lucrative western land speculation spurred the American Revolution. Washington was a prosperous land speculator, and in 1767 he encouraged adventurers to acquire backcountry western lands. Washington helped lead widespread protests against Townshend Act. The Townshend Acts passed by Parliament in 1767, and he introduced a proposal in May 1769 which urged Virginians to boycott British goods. The acts were mostly repealed in 1770. Parliament sought to punish Massachusetts colonists for their role in Boston Tea Party in 1774 by passing the Coercive Act. Well, shit. The Coercive Acts, huh? Alright then, there, England. Which Washington saw as an invasion of our rights and privileges. He said Americans must not submit to acts of tyranny, since custom and use shall make us tame and subject slaves. Or abject, sorry. Let me reread that. He said Americans must not submit to acts of tyranny, since custom and use shall make us tame and abject slaves, as well, that July, he and George Mason drafted a list of resolutions for Fairfax County Committee, including a call to end the Atlantic slave trade, which were adopted. On August 1st, Washington attended the First Virginia Convention. There he was selected as delegate for the First Continental Congress. As tensions rose in 1774, he helped train militias in Virginia and organized enforcement of Continental Association boycott of British goods instituted by Congress. There's that boycott. Invented by the French first as an outdoor game, the first indoor billiards table was owned by King Louis XI in the 1400s. Interesting. Interesting indeed. The American Revolutionary War broke out on April 19, 1775, with the battles of Lexington and Concord and the siege of Boston. Upon hearing the news, Washington was sobered and dismayed. 'Cause he was drunk at the time. Oh, just kidding. And he hastily departed Mount Vernon on May 4th, 1775, to join the Second Continental Congress in Philadelphia. Yep, he was totally wasted. He was smashed when he heard the news. And then Washington was sobered and dismayed, according to his own, the horse's mouth, the Washington's mouth. Right, according to the Washington's mouth. On June 14th, 1775, Congress created the Continental Army, and John Adams nominated Washington as its commander-in-chief, mainly because of his military experience and belief that a Virginian would better unite the colonies. He was unanimously elected by Congress the next day. Washington appeared before Congress in uniform and gave an acceptance speech on June 16th, declining a salary, though he was later reimbursed expenses. Washington appeared before Congress in uniform and gave an acceptance speech, declining a salary, though was later reimbursed. Fucking nuts. Dude was like, you know what? I'm gonna start this country. Whether it be... Nah, fuck it. It's just gonna be by my own hand. I don't need to get paid for this. This needs to be done. The fucking champion. Washington was commissioned on June 19th and officially appointed by Congress as General and Commander-in-Chief of the Army of the United Colonies and all the forces raised or to be raised by them. He was instructed to take charge of the siege of Boston on June 22nd, 1775. Congress chose his primary staff officers, including Major General Artemus Ward, Adjutant General Horatio Gates, Major General Charles Lee, Major General Philip Schuyler, and Major General Nathaniel Greene. Henry Knox, a young bookkeeper, impressed Adams and Washington with ordnance knowledge and was subsequently promoted to Colonel-in-Chief of Artillery. Similarly, Washington was impressed by Alexander Hamilton's intelligence and bravery. He would later promote him to colonel and appoint him his aide-de-camp. Let's go, Alexander Hamilton, the legend. Washington initially banned the enlistment of blacks, both free and enslaved, into the Continental Army. The British saw an opportunity to divide the colonies, and the colonial governor of Virginia issued a proclamation which promised freedom to slaves if they joined the British. Desperate for manpower by late 1777, Washington relented and overturned his ban. By the end of the war, around 1/10 of Washington's army were blacks. Following the British surrender, Washington sought to enforce terms of the preliminary Treaty of Paris by reclaiming slaves freed by the British and returning them to servitude. He arranged to make this request to Sir Guy Carleton on May 6, 1783. Instead, Carleton issued 3,000 freedom certificates, and all former slaves in New York City were able to leave before the city was evacuated by the British in late November 1783. In early 1775, in response to the growing rebellious movement, London sent British troops to occupy Boston, led by General Thomas Gage, commander of British forces in America. They set up fortifications, making the city impervious to attack. Local militias surrounded the city and effectively trapped the British troops, resulting in a standoff. As Washington headed for Boston, word of his march preceded him, and he was greeted everywhere. Gradually, he became a symbol of the Patriot cause. Upon Washington's arrival on July 2nd, 1775, 2 weeks after the Battle of Bunker Hill, he set up a headquarters in Cambridge. When he went to inspect the army, he found undisciplined militia. After consultation, he initiated Benjamin Franklin's suggestion reforms, drilling the soldiers and imposing strict discipline. Washington ordered his officers to identify the skills of recruits to ensure military effectiveness while removing incompetent officers. The legend! He petitioned Gage, his former superior, to release captured Patriot officers from prison and treat them humanely. In October 1775, King George III declared that the colonies were in open rebellion and relieved Gage of command for his incompetence, replacing him with General William Howe. Amanda, welcome in. How you doing? How's your night? Talking about some good old G-dubs. The Continental Army, reduced to only 9,600 men by January 1776 due to expiring short-term enlistments, had to be supplemented with militia. Soon, they were joined by Knox with heavy artillery captured from Fort Ticonderoga. When the Charles River froze over, Washington was eager to cross and storm Boston, but General Gates and others were opposed to the untrained militia striking well-garrisoned fortifications. Instead, he agreed to secure Dorchester Heights, 100 feet above Boston, with Knox artillery and try to force the British out. Dude took the high ground and was like, we're just gonna rain shells on them. Fuck it. On March 9th, under the cover of darkness, Washington troops bombarded British ships in the Boston harbor. On March 17th, 9,000 British troops and loyalists began a chaotic 10-day evacuation aboard 120 ships. Soon after, Washington entered the city with 500 men, with explicit orders not to plunder the city. He refrained from exerting military authority in Boston, leaving civilian matters in the hands of local authorities. After the victory at Boston, Washington correctly guessed that the British would return to New York City, a loyalist stronghold, and retaliate. You know, New York City would be a loyalist stronghold, you bunch of fucks. You bunch of fucks over here with your fucking pizza and your fucking bagels and your fucking shit over here. Fucking New York over here. He arrived there on April 13, 1776, and ordered the construction of fortifications to thwart the expected British attack. He also ordered his occupying forces to treat civilians and their property with respect to avoid the abuses Bostonians suffered at the hands of British troops. Yeah, well, if they're being loyalists to the British, I mean, unless they're being loyalists to the Patriots, but then you would just call them Patriots, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you just call them Patriots? You would think loyalists is referring to fucking British loyalists. Pretty sure there was no pizza or bagels back then, all tea and crumpets and rickets. Damn it. Dano, let's go. Welcome in. I am doing well. A little bit under the weather lately, but that's okay. We'll be alright. Be alright over here. Stopping in on your way to bed? Well, thanks for stopping in, Dano. You're a legend. Have a great sleep. Enjoy your rest. And we'll see you next time. Or hang out as long as you want. It's up to you. Talking about George Washington. How transported the resupplied army with the British fleet from Halifax to New York City. George Germain, who ran the British war effort in England, believed it could be won with one decisive blow. The British forces, including more than 100 ships and thousands of troops, began arriving on Staten Island on July 2nd to lay siege to the city. After the Declaration of Independence was unanimously adopted on July 4th, Washington informed his troops on July 9th that Congress had declared the United Colonies to be free and independent states. Let's fucking go! F you, Britain! House troops' strength totaled 32,000 regulars and Hessian auxiliaries, and Washington's consisted of 23,000, mostly raw recruits and militia. In August, Howe landed 20,000 troops at Gravesend, Brooklyn, and approached Washington's fortifications, opposing his generals. Washington chose to fight. Based on inaccurate information, the Howe's army had only 8,000 plus troops. Damn it. Damn it. The false intel. In the Battle of Long Island, Howe assaulted Washington's flank and inflicted 1,500 Patriot casualties, the British suffering 400. Washington retreated, instructing General William Heath to acquire rivercraft. On August 30, General William Alexander held off the British and gave cover while the army crossed the East River under darkness to Manhattan without loss of life or material, although Alexander was captured. Howe was emboldened by his Long Island victory and dispatched Washington as George Washington in futility to negotiate peace. Washington declined, demanding to be addressed with diplomatic protocol as general and fellow belligerent, not as rebel, lest his men be hanged as such if captured. Dang. The Royal Navy bombarded the unstable earthworks on Lower Manhattan Island. Despite misgivings, Washington heeded the advice of the generals Greene and Putnam to defend Fort Washington. They were unable to hold it. Washington abandoned the fort and ordered his army north to the White Plains. Yo, Fredo, what's going on? Welcome in. You still at work or what? You done working? You done working? What's going on? Howe's pursuit forced Washington to retreat across the Hudson River to Fort Lee to avoid encirclement. Howe landed his troops on Manhattan in November and captured Fort Washington, inflicting high casualties on the Americans. Washington was responsible for delaying the retreat, though he blamed Congress and General Greene. Loyalists in New York City considered Howe a liberator and spread a rumor that Washington had set fire to the city. Patriot morale reached its lowest when Lee was captured. Yeah, see? I knew those motherfuckers were British loyalists, you sons of bitches. You're right. You know what? You're right. There wasn't any pizza and shit back in the day. It was all tea and crumpets, you British loyalists. New York City. Damn liberals every time. Now reduced to 5,400 troops, Washington's army retreated through New Jersey, and Howe broke off pursuit to set up winter quarters in New York. Son of a beezy. Washington crossed the Delaware River into Pennsylvania, where Lee's replacement, General John Sullivan, joined him with 2,000 more troops. The future of the Continental Army was in doubt due to lack of supplies, a harsh winter, expiring enlistments, and desertions. Washington was disappointed that many New Jersey residents were loyalists or skeptical about independence. Howe split up his army and posted a Hessian garrison at Trenton to hold western New Jersey and the east shore of the Delaware. Desperate for a victory, Washington and his generals devised a surprise attack on Trenton. The army was to cross the Delaware in 3 divisions, one led by Washington, 2,400 troops, another by General James Ewing, 700, and the third by Colonel John Cadwalader, 1,500 troops. The force was then split, with Washington taking the Pennington Road and General Sullivan traveling south on the river's edge. Gotta put bacon on the table. Good thing Ninja is streaming now, because I can be educated at the same time. Let's go. Let's go, buddy. Still on the slave whip, man. Yep. An hour or 2 left. Right on. Well, that'll happen. Washington ordered 60-mile search for Durham boats to transport his army, and the destruction of vessels that could be used by the British. He personally risked capture while staking out the Jersey shoreline alone, leading up to the crossing. There's fucking legends out there alone. He's just chilling, staking it out by himself. What? Oh, shit. He's like, you know what? I can't trust the intel no more. I'm gonna go check it out for myself this time. Ah, shit. Washington crossed the Delaware on Christmas night, 1776. His men followed across the ice-obstructed river from McConkey's Ferry, with 40 men per vessel. The wind churned up the waters, and they were pelted with hail. But by 3 a.m., on December 26th, they made it across with no losses. Knox was delayed, managing frightened horses, about 18 field guns on a flat-bombed ferries. Cadwalader and Ewing failed to cross due to the ice and heavy currents. Failures. Once Knox arrived, Washington proceeded to Trenton rather than risk being spotted returning his army to Pennsylvania. Yup, too late to turn back now. The troops spotted Hessian positions a mile from Trenton, so Washington split his forces into two columns, rallying his men. Soldiers, keep by your officers. For God's sake, keep by your officers. The two columns were separate at the Birmingham crossroads. General Greene's column took the upper ferry road, led by Washington, and General Sullivan's column advanced on River Road. The Americans marched in sleet and snowfall. Many were shoeless, with bloodied feet, and 2 died of exposure. At sunrise, Washington, aided by Colonel Knox and artillery, led his men in a surprise attack on the unsuspecting Hessians and their commander, Colonel Johann Rall. The Hessians had 22 killed, including Colonel Rall, 83 wounded, and 850 captured with supplies. Dang. You wonder why Americans will go the extra mile? It's because we always motherfucking have. Every damn time. Doesn't matter if our feet are fucking bloody, cut up, and we're exposed to the elements, we will carry on. It's the most American thing I've ever fucking heard. Let's go. Washington retreated across the Delaware to Pennsylvania and returned to New Jersey on January 3rd, 1777, launching an attack on British regulars at Princeton, with 40 Americans killed or wounded, and 273 British killed or captured. American generals Hugh Mercer and John Caldwater were being driven back by the British when Mercer was mortally wounded. Washington arrived and led the men in a counterattack which advanced to within 30 yards of the British line. Some British troops retreated after a brief stand, while others took refuge in Nassau Hall, which became a target of Colonel Alexander Hamilton's cannons. Washington troops charged. The British surrendered in less than an hour, and 194 soldiers laid down their arms. Howe retreated to New York City, where his army remained inactive until early the next year. Washington took up winter headquarters in Jacob Arnold's Tavern in Morristown, New Jersey, while he received munitions from Hibernian mines. While in Morristown, Washington's troops disrupted British supply lines and expelled them from parts of New Jersey. Like legends. It's that incremental gain. Just the little bitty gains. Just keep poking at them all winter like, ha, we've been here. We know what it's like. What's up? Home field advantage, bitch. During his stay in Morristown, Washington ordered the inoculation of the Continental troops against smallpox. This went against the wishes of Continental Congress, who had issued a proclamation prohibiting it. But Washington feared the spread of smallpox in the army. The mass inoculation proved successful, with only isolated infections occurring and no regiments incapacitated by the disease. The fucking champion, let's go. The British still controlled New York, and many Patriot soldiers did not re-enlist or deserted after the harsh winter campaign. Congress instituted greater rewards for re-enlisting and punishments for the desertion, to the effect of greater troop numbers. Yep. I mean, sucks to suck, right? All the dudes that are not re-enlisting or deserting, but the guys that did, shout out to them. The fucking legends that wouldn't give up the true American dream. Fucking A. Strategically, Washington's victories at Trenton and Princeton were pivotal. They revived Patriot morale and quashed British strategy of showing overwhelming force, followed by offering generous terms, changing the course of the war. In February 1777, word of the American victories reached London, and the British realized the Patriots were in a position to demand unconditional independence. bada bing. In July 1777, British General John Burgoyne led the Saratoga campaign from Quebec through Lake Champlain and recaptured Fort Ticonderoga, intending to divide New England, including control of the Hudson River. However, General Howe in British-occupied New York City blundered, taking his army to Philadelphia rather than up the Hudson River to join Burgoyne near Albany. Washington and Gilbert du Motier, Marquis de Lafayette, rushed to Philadelphia to engage Howe. In the Battle of Brandywine on September 11th, 1777, Howe outmaneuvered Washington and marched unopposed into the nation's capital at Philadelphia. A Patriot attack failed against the British Germantown in October. Damn it. In upstate New York, the Patriots were led by General Horatio Gates. Concerned about Burgoyne's movement southward, Washington sent reinforcements north with General Benedict Arnold, his most aggressive field commander, and Benjamin Lincoln. On October 7th, 1777, Burgoyne tried to take Bemis Heights, but was isolated from support by Howe. He was forced to retreat to Saratoga and ultimately surrendered after the battles of Saratoga. As Washington suspected, Gates' victory emboldened his critics. Biographer John Alden maintains it was inevitable that the defeats of Washington's forces and the concurrent victory of the forces in Upper New York should be compared. Admiration for Washington was waning, including little credit from John Adams. All right, you're 1,000% crashing out. Have a great rest of the stream, dude. Hell yeah. Have a good night, Shane. Sleep well. Good sir. Appreciate you stopping in, you legend. Washington and his Continental Army of 11,000 men went into winter quarters at Valley Forge, north of Philadelphia, in December 1777. There they lost between 2,000 and 3,000 men as a result of disease and lack of food, clothing, and shelter. The British were comfortably quartered in Philadelphia, paying for supplies in pounds sterling, while Washington struggled with a devalued American paper currency. The woodlands were soon exhausted of game. By February, Washington was faced lowering morale and increased desertions among his troops. An internal revolt by his officers, led by Major General Thomas Conway, prompted some members of Congress to consider removing Washington from command. Washington's supporters resisted, and the matter was dropped after much deliberation. Once the plot was exposed, Conway wrote an apology to Washington, resigned, and returned to France. Yep, bye. Bye. Get the fuck out of here, dude. Washington made repeated petitions to Congress for provisions. He received a congressional delegation to check the Army's conditions and expressed the urgency of the situation, proclaiming, "Something must be done. Important alterations must be made." He recommended that Congress expedite supplies, and Congress agreed to strengthen and fund the Army's supply lines by reorganizing the Commissionary Department. By late February, supplies began arriving. Meanwhile, Baron Friedrich Wilhelm von Steuben, incessant drilling transformed Washington's recruits into a disciplined fighting force by the end of winter camp. For his services, Washington promoted von Steuben to Major General and made him Chief of Staff. In early 1778, the French responded to Burgoyne's defeat and entered into a treaty of alliance with the Americans. Congress ratified the treaty in May, which amounted to a French declaration of war against Britain. In May 1778, Howe resigned and was replaced by Sir Henry Clinton. Okay, so if Shane is still here, I don't know if he's still here, but he was asking if in the War of 1812, Americans kind of jumped in there and fucking, because of all the shit that was going on between Britain and France at the time, right? If Americans were trying to take fucking advantage because Britain was already like getting fucking sacked and we thought we could get more territory. Yes. Same thing with the French. Like, Britain gets kind of beef from everybody, right? Until like everybody started getting their independence from the British, they fucking got beef, man. The beef went around. It was like Beef Wellington. Just to be a douche. Shit. But yes, the French were like, oh, let's take advantage of this shit. Man. In May 1778, Howe resigned and was replaced by Sir Henry Clinton. Yeah, because he wasn't getting anything done. The British evacuated Philadelphia for New York that June, and Washington summoned a war council of American and French generals. He chose a partial attack on retreating British at the Battle of Monmouth. Generals Charles Lee and Lafayette moved with 4,000 men without Washington's knowledge and bungled their first attack on June 28th. Washington relieved Lee and achieved a draw after an expensive battle. At nightfall, the British continued their retreat to New York, and Washington moved his army outside the city. Monmouth was Washington's last battle in the North. Washington became America's first spy master by designing an espionage system against the British. Like a ninja. Let's go! Washington using the shinobi way. In 1778, Major Benjamin Talmadge formed the Culper Ring at Washington's direction to covertly collect information about the British in New York. Man, 1700, like old-timey CIA. Amazing. Washington has disregarded incidents of disloyalty by Benedict Arnold, who had distinguished himself in many campaigns, including his invasion of Quebec and the Battle of Saratoga. In 1780, Arnold began supplying the British spymaster John Andre with sensitive information intended to compromise Washington and capture West Point, a key American defensive position on the Hudson River. Historians Nathaniel Philbrick and Ron Chernow noted possible reasons for Arnold's defection to be his anger at losing promotions to junior officers or repeated slights from Congress. He was also deeply in debt, profiteering from the war, and disappointed by Washington's lack of support during his eventual court-martial. Well, traitor as fuck, that's all I gotta say. Bastard. After repeated requests, Washington agreed to give Arnold command of West Point in August. On September 21st, Arnold met Andre and gave him plans to take over the garrison while returning to British lines. Andre was captured by militia who discovered the plans. Upon hearing the news of Andre's capture on September 24th, while waiting to greet and have breakfast with Washington, Arnold immediately fled to the HMS Vulture, the ship that had brought Andre to West Point, and escaped to New York. It's like, shit, I gotta get out, buddy. I gotta go, buddy. Upon being told about Arnold's treason, Washington recalled the commander's position under Arnold at key points around the fort to prevent any complicity. He assumed personal command at West Point and reorganized its defenses. Andre's trial for espionage ended in a death sentence, and Washington offered to return him to the British in exchange for Arnold, but Clinton refused. Damn it, Bill. I'm just kidding. Andre was hanged on October 2nd, 1780, despite his request for a firing squad to deter other spies. That's right. Deterrents work, damn it. They work. In 1778, General Clinton shipped 3,000 troops from New York to Georgia and launched a southern invasion against Savannah, reinforced by 2,000 British and Loyalist troops. They repelled an attack by American patriots and French naval forces, which bolstered the British war effort. Yeah, bastards. In 1778, Iroquois warriors joined with Loyalist rangers led by Walter Butler and killed more than 200 frontiersmen, laying waste to the Wyoming Valley in northeastern Pennsylvania. In mid-1779, in response to this and other attacks on New England towns, Washington ordered General John Sullivan to lead an expedition to force the Iroquois out of New York by effecting the total destruction and devastation of their villages and taking their women and children hostage. The expedition systematically destroyed Iroquois villages and food stocks, and forced at least 5,036 Iroquois to flee to British Canada. Yep, gotta flee to British Canada. The campaign directly killed a few hundred Iroquois, but according to historian Rhiannon Kohler, the net effect was to reduce the Iroquois by half. They became unable to survive the harsh winter of 1779 to 1780. Some historians now describe the campaign was a genocide. Dang. Washington's troops went into quarters at Morristown, New Jersey, for the worst winter of the war, with temperatures well below freezing. New York Harbor was frozen, snow covered the ground for weeks, and troops again lacked provisions. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and go back. Some historians now describe it as whatever the fuck. Motherfuckers, please. This was a war for the independence of the country. Like the colonies that created the country that we live in and love and enjoy nowadays. You know, this beautiful, wonderful country that is the United States of America. This was a war for the independence of that. Now, I don't mean to sound like an asshole when I say this, but I mean, if the Iroquois are going to join the British, well, I mean, if you're going to join the enemy, you're going to become part of the enemy. You kind of fucking... I don't hate to be that guy when I say you brought it on your fucking selves. Right? I don't think it was a fucking genocide. I think it was a warning to anybody the fuck else who wants to join the British and stop us from achieving our freedom and independence from the United Kingdom or the English Empire at the time, right? Like, fuck. It's a warning, a deterrent, and it worked. Washington's troops went into quarters at Morristown, New Jersey for the worst winter of the war, with temperatures well below freezing. New York Harbor was frozen, snow covered the ground for weeks, and troops again lacked provisions. In January 1780, Clinton assembled 12,500 troops and attacked Charlestown, South Carolina, defeating General Benjamin Lincoln. By June, they occupied South Carolina Piedmont. Clinton returned to New York and left 8,000 troops under the command General Charles Cornwallis. Congress replaced Lincoln with Horatio Gates after his defeat in the Battle of Camden. Gates was replaced by Nathaniel Greene, Washington's initial choice, but the British had firm control of the South. Washington was reinvigorated, however, when Lafayette returned from France with more ships, men, and supplies. And 5,000 veteran French troops led by Marshal Rochambeau arrived at Newport, Rhode Island in July 1780. French naval forces then led by Admiral de Grasse. Washington's army went into winter quarters at New Windsor, New York in December 1780. He urged Congress and state officials to expedite provisions so the army would not continue to struggle under the same difficulties they had hitherto endured. On March 1st, 1781, Congress ratified the Articles of Confederation, but the government that took effect on March 2nd did not have the power to levy taxes, and it loosely held the states together. Damn it. Agreed? Well, thank you, Amanda. Glad that somebody agrees with my takes. Rather extreme they may be. General Clinton sent Benedict Arnold, now a British brigadier general with 1,700 troops, to Virginia to capture Portsmouth and conduct raids on Patriot forces. Washington responded by sending Lafayette south to counter Arnold's efforts. Washington initially hoped to bring the fight to New York, drawing off the British forces from Virginia and ending the war there. But Rochambeau advised him that Cornwallis in Virginia was a better target. De Grasse's fleet arrived off the Virginia coast, cutting off the British retreat. Seeing the advantage, Washington made a feint towards Clinton in New York, then headed south to Virginia. Ooh. Got their movement tactics. The siege of Yorktown was a decisive victory by the combined forces of the Continental Army, commanded by Washington, the French Army commanded by General Comte de Rochambeau, and the French Navy commanded by Admiral de Grasse. On August 19th, the march to Yorktown led by Washington and Rochambeau began, which is known now as the Celebrated March. Washington was in command of an army of 7,800 Frenchmen, 3,100 militia, and 8,000 Continentals. Inexperienced in siege warfare, he often deferred to the judgment of General Rochambeau and relied on his advice. Despite this, Rochambeau never challenged Washington's authority as the battle's commanding officer. Respect. Man, that's how you get shit done right there. That is absolutely how business alliances and cooperation should be done. Between two leading men. Right there. That is exactly how it should be done. Holy shit. By late September, Patriot French forces surrounded Yorktown, trapped the British Army, and prevented British reinforcements from Clinton in the north. While the French Navy emerged victorious at the Battle of Chesapeake, the final American offensive began with a shot fired by Washington. The siege ended with a British surrender on October 19, 1781. Over 7,000 British soldiers became prisoners of war. Washington negotiated terms of surrender for 2 days, and the official signing ceremony took place on October 19th. Cornwallis claimed illness and was absent, sending General Charles O'Hara as his proxy. As a gesture of goodwill, Washington held a dinner for the American, French, and British generals, all of whom fraternized on friendly terms and identified with one another as members of the same professional military caste. Man, the degree of epicness that fucking Washington was, dude. Holy shit. Man. Afterwards, Washington moved the army to New Windsor, New York, where they remained stationed until the Treaty of Paris was signed on September 3rd, 1783, formally ending the war. Although the peace treaty did not happen for 2 years following the end of the battle, Yorktown proved to be the last significant battle or campaign of the Revolutionary War, with British Parliament agreeing to cease hostilities in March 1782. When peace negotiations began in April 1782, both British and French began gradually evacuating their forces, with the American treasury empty. Unpaid and mutinous soldiers forced the adjournment of Congress. In March 1783, Washington successfully claimed the Newburgh Conspiracy and planned mutiny by American officers. Congress promised each a 5-year bonus. Washington submitted an account of $450,000 in expenses, which he had advanced to the Army, equivalent to $9.53 million in 2023. The account was settled, though it was allegedly vague about large sums and included expenses his wife had incurred through visits to his headquarters. Hey man, gotta have them tax write-offs, right? Shit, even in day one. Oh. The following month, a congressional committee led by Alexander Hamilton began adapting the Army for peacetime. In 1783, Washington gave the Army's perspective to the committee in his Sentiments on a Peace Establishment, which advised Congress to keep a standing army, create a national militia of separate state units, and establish a navy and a national military academy. You have to have some kind of defense, otherwise you could just get invaded. The Treaty of Paris was signed on September 3rd, 1783, and Britain officially recognized American independence. Washington disbanded his army, giving a farewell address to his soldiers on November 2nd. During this time, Washington oversaw the evacuation of British forces in New York and was greeted by parades and celebrations. Along with Governor George Clinton, he took formal possession of the city on November 25th. In early December 1783, Washington bade farewell to his officers at Fraunces Tavern and resigned as commander-in-chief soon thereafter. In a final appearance in uniform, he gave a statement to Congress. I consider it an indispensable duty to close this last solemn act of my official life by commending the interests of our dearest country to the protection of Almighty God and those who have superintendence of them, to his holy keeping. Nailed it. Washington's resignation was acclaimed at home and abroad and showed a skeptical world that the new republic would not degenerate into chaos. The same month, Washington was appointed President General of the Society of Cincinnati, a newly established hereditary fraternity of Revolutionary War officers. He served in this capacity for the remainder of his life. Before returning to private life in June 1783, Washington called for a strong union. Though he was concerned that he might be criticized for meddling in civil matters, he sent a circular letter to the states maintaining the Articles of Confederation was no more than a rope of sand. He believed the nation was on the verge of anarchy and confusion, was vulnerable to foreign intervention, and that a national constitution would unify the states under a strong central government. When Shays' Rebellion erupted in Massachusetts over taxation, Washington was further convinced that a national constitution was needed. Some nationalists feared that the new republic had descended into lawlessness and they met on September 11th, 1786 at Annapolis to ask Congress to revise the Articles of Confederation. Man, September 11th coming up a lot. Just throwing that out there. It's very interesting. One of their biggest efforts was getting Washington to attend. Congress agreed to a constitutional convention to be held in Philadelphia in the spring 1787, with each state to send delegates. On the 4th of December, 1786, so many say Washington was our best president. He was. He literally was. He set the way. Like, he willingly gave up and gladly gave up his presidency after 2 terms. He was like, dude, it wasn't in it for the power. He was definitely in it to for the people, right? He was definitely a people's guy. On December 4th, 1786, Washington was chosen to lead the Virginia delegation, but he declined on December 21st. He had concerns about the legality of the convention and consulted James Madison and Henry Knox and others. They persuaded him to attend. His presence might induce reluctant states to send delegates and smooth the way for the ratification process, while also giving legitimacy to the convention. On March 28th, Washington told Governor Edmund Rudolph that he would attend the convention, but made it clear that he was urged to attend. Washington arrived in Philadelphia on May 9th, 1787. Though a quorum was not attained until May 25th. Benjamin Franklin nominated Washington to preside over the convention, and he was unanimously elected to serve as President General. The convention's state-mandated purpose was to revise the Articles of Confederation, and a new government would be established when the resulting document was duly confirmed by the several states. Randolph introduced Madison's Virginia Plan on May 27th, the third day of the convention. It called for an entirely new constitution and a sovereign national government, which Washington highly recommended. Yeah, you can see that? Yeah, buddy. That's why I decided to go over them tonight. Relevant. We need more men like this in the world, I tell you. On July 10th, Washington wrote to Alexander Hamilton, "I almost despair of seeing a favorable issue in the proceedings of our convention, and do therefore repent having had any agency in the business." Nevertheless, he lent his prestige to the work of other delegates, unsuccessfully lobbying many to support ratification of the Constitution, such as Anti-Federalists Edmund Rudolph and George Mason. The final version was voted on and signed by 39 of the 55 delegates on September 17, 1787. In 1788, the Board of Visitors of the College of William and Mary decided to re-establish the position of Chancellor and elected Washington to the office on January 18th. The college rector Samuel Griffin wrote to Washington inviting him to the post. And in a letter dated April 30th, 1788, Washington accepted the position of the 14th Chancellor of the College of William and Mary. He continued to serve through his presidency until his death on December 14th, 1799. The delegates to the convention anticipated a Washington presidency and left him to define the office once elected. The state electors under the Constitution voted for a president on February 4th, 1789, and Washington suspected that most Republicans had not voted for him. The mandated March 4th date passed without a congressional quorum to count the votes, but a quorum was reached on April 5th. The votes were tallied the next day, and Washington won the majority of every state's electoral votes. He was informed of his election as president by Congressional Secretary Charles Thompson. John Adams received the next highest number of votes and was elected vice president. Despite feeling anxious and painful sensations about leaving Mount Vernon, he departed for New York City on April 16th to be inaugurated. Yeah, dude was actually nervous to be president. Like, what the fuck? But, yes. How did people vote then? They put a name on a piece of paper and stuck it in a box that was closed off, and then that box was taken and counted by a third party. It's basically the same way voting's been done throughout all of history. I mean, you just get a consensus of who wants this or that, but I'm pretty sure it was... Back then, even, it was private voting. Like, you go into a little booth, you drop whoever's name you want, and I'm sure there was a list of candidates you could vote for. John Adams and George Washington being on that list. and obviously being the winner and the runner-up, becoming president and vice president. Washington was inaugurated on April 30th, 1789, taking the oath of office at Federal Hall in New York City. His coach was led by militia and marching band and followed by statesmen and foreign dignitaries in an inaugural parade with a crowd of 10,000. Chancellor Robert R. Livingston administered the oath using a Bible provided by the Masons, after which the militia fired a 13-gun salute. Washington read a speech in the Senate chamber asking that Almighty Being consecrate the liberties and the happiness of the people of the United States. Although he wished to serve without a salary, Congress insisted that he accepted, later providing Washington $25,000 per year to defray costs of the presidency, equivalent to $6.39 million a year today. Damn. Washington wrote to James Madison, "As the first of everything in our situation will serve to establish a precedent. It is devoutly wished on my part that these precedents be fixed on true principles." The fucking legend. To that end, he preferred the title Mr. President over more majestic names proposed by the Senate, including His Excellency and His Highness the President. Ah, shit. There's no way. Ah, fuck. Oh my god, are you kidding me? What the hell? His Excellency and His Highness President, dude. Nuh-uh. What? Ah, come on. His executive precedents included inaugural address messages to Congress and the cabinet form of the executive branch. Fuck. Legendary. Washington planned to resign after his first term, but political strife convinced him to remain in office. He was an able administrator and a judge of talent and character. He regularly talked with department heads to get their advice. He tolerated opposing views, despite fears of a democratic system would lead to political violence. I'm going to reread that. He tolerated opposing views, despite fears that a democratic system would lead to political violence. And he conducted a smooth transition of power to his successor. Just throwing that out there. He remained nonpartisan throughout his presidency and opposed to divisiveness of political parties, but he favored a strong central government, was sympathetic to a federalist form of government, and leery of the Republican opposition. Washington dealt with major problems the old Confederation lacked the powers to handle its workload, and it had weak leadership. No executive, a small bureaucracy of clerks, large debt, worthless paper money, and no power to establish taxes. He had the task of assembling an executive department and relied on Tobias Lear for advice selecting its offices. Britain refused to relinquish its forts in the American West, and Barbary pirates preyed on American merchant ships in the Mediterranean before the United States even had a navy. Yep, Barbary Wars. We're gonna do that one time. Battle tactics and war strategies. Fucking right. Congress created executive departments in 1789, including the State Department in July, the War Department in August, the Treasury Department in September. Washington appointed Edmund Rudolph as Attorney General, Samuel Osgood as Postmaster General, Thomas Jefferson as Secretary of State, Henry Knox as Secretary of War, and Alexander Hamilton as Secretary of Treasury. Washington's cabinet became a consulting and advisory body not mandated by the Constitution. Washington's cabinet members formed rival parties with sharply opposing views. most fiercely illustrated between Hamilton and Jefferson. Washington restricted cabinet discussions to topics of his choosing without participating in the debate. He occasionally requested cabinet opinions in writing and expected department heads to agreeably carry out his decisions. That's right. Fucking Washington playing the fucking dad role. He's like, all right, little boys, calm down. No fighting, no fighting. No fighting at the dinner table. You got something to say? Write it down. Washington was apolitical and opposed to the formation of parties, suspecting that conflict would undermine republicanism. Thank God. Just reaffirms why I hold the views that I hold. Holy shit. He exercised great restraint in using his veto power, writing that I give my signature to many bills with which my judgment is at variance. Legendary intelligence, man. His closet advisors formed two factions, portending the first party system. Secretary of Treasury Alexander Hamilton formed the Federalist Party to promote national credit and financially powerful nation. Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson opposed Hamilton's agenda and founded the Jeffersonian Republicans. Washington favored Hamilton's agenda, however, it ultimately went into effect, resulting in bitter controversy. Damn it. Washington proclaimed November 26, 1789 as a day of thanksgiving to encourage national unity. It is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey His will, to be grateful for His benefits, and humbly to implore His protection and favor. He spent that day fasting and visiting debtors in prison to provide them with food and beer. Fucking champion! And that's how we have Thanksgiving. In response to two anti-slavery petitions that were presented to Congress in 1790, slaveholders in Georgia and South Carolina threatened to blow the trumpet of civil war. Washington and Congress responded with a series of racist measures. Naturalization was denied to black immigrants. Blacks were barred from serving in state militias. The Southwest Territory, later state of Tennessee, was permitted to maintain slavery, and two more slave states were admitted, Kentucky and Tennessee. On February 12, 1793, Washington signed into law the Fugitive Slave Act, which overrode state laws and courts, allowing agents to cross state lines and return escaped slaves. Many free blacks in the North decried the law, believing it would allow bounty hunting and kidnapping. The Fugitive Slave Act gave effect to the Constitution's Fugitive Slave Clause, and the act was passed overwhelmingly in Congress. At the same time, Washington signed a reenactment of the Northwest Ordinance in 1789, which had freed all slaves bought after 1787 into a vast expanse of federal territory north of the Ohio River, except for slaves escaping from slave states. In 1787, the law lapsed when the new U.S. Constitution was ratified in 1789. He also signed the Slave Trade Act of 1794, which sharply limited American involvement in Atlantic slave trade. On February 18, 1791, Congress admitted the free slave state of Vermont into the Union as the 14th state as of March 4, 1791. Washington's first term was largely devoted to economic concerns. Establishment of public credit became a primary challenge for federal government. Hamilton submitted a report to a deadlocked Congress, and he, Madison and Jefferson reached a compromise of 1790 in which Jefferson agreed to Hamilton's debt proposals in exchange for moving the nation's capital temporarily to Philadelphia and then south to Georgetown on the Potomac River. The terms were legislated and in the Funding Act of 1790 and the Residence Act, both of which Washington signed into law. Congress authorized the assumption and payment of the nation's debts, with funding provided by customs duties and excise taxes. Hamilton caused controversy in cabinet by advocating for the establishment of First Bank of the United States. Madison and Jefferson objected to the idea, but legislation creating the bank easily passed Congress. Jefferson and Rudolph insisted the federal government was going beyond its constitutional authority. Hamilton argued the government could charter the bank under the implied powers granted by the Constitution. Washington sided with Hamilton and signed the bank legislation on February 25th, 1791. The rift between Hamilton and Jefferson, meanwhile, became openly hostile. Yeah, because at this point, Washington is just going with whatever Hamilton says. Hamilton was a really smart guy when it came to, like, numbers and shit, and had, done a good job displaying his tactical and strategical mind when it comes to battle. And then on the whole slave thing real quick, you gotta understand, the dude is fucking president, right? So whether you want to point fingers at him and say, oh, it was George Washington that was signing all these racist laws, gotta understand the times were different, man. If he were to be like, oh, I reject all of this shit, public support would have gone through the floor. Congressional support would have gone through the floor. And the new country that was just fucking formed and is still being kind of set up properly would have just crumbled to pieces. You gotta understand. Gotta understand. Think about it in the context that it's in. That's part of what I mean by propagandized information in today's day and age, right? Propagandized history, because they're gonna label shit in a negative light, and while it may make somebody look bad, it's like in the context of what was going on during that time period, it's actually really understandable, most if not all of his actions. A smart person could see he knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't fucking stupid. He knew what needed to be done, and did rightly that. The nation's first financial crisis occurred in March 1792. Hamilton's Federalists exploited large loans to gain control of U.S. debt securities, causing a run on the national bank. The markets returned to normal by mid-April. Jefferson believed Hamilton was part of the scheme, despite Hamilton's efforts to ameliorate. Jefferson and Hamilton adopted diametrically opposed political principles. Hamilton believed in a strong national government requiring the national bank and foreign loans to function, while Jefferson believed the states and the farm element should primarily direct the government, and he also represented the idea of banks and foreign loans. To Washington's dismay, the two men persistently entered into disputes and fighting. Hamilton demanded that Jefferson resign if he could not support Washington, and Jefferson told Washington that Hamilton's fiscal system would lead to the overthrow of the Republic. Washington urged them to call a truce for the sake of the nation, but they ignored him. Now imagine if he threw, back to my previous point, imagine if he threw the other thing into the mix and just decided to start, it was already shaky as shit, man. Like, come on, you want to add more? Add more fucking kindling to that fire? Hell no. 100% yeah, for real? Exactly. A lot of people don't think about things in context. They take things out of context, or even ask. Like, they'll get presented with a piece of information on TikTok, no context, just blatant piece of information, and people are like, oh my god, ugh. Oh, it hurts to listen to. Oh my god, why, how could somebody say such a, oh my god? And it's like, dude, what? Why don't you first be like, okay, well, what's the context here? I'm sure there's two sides to every story, and I want all of the details instead of just this one snippet of information that makes something sound wild as shit. Right? Like, what? Give me all of the details. Don't just give me the fucking headline. That's why it's important to read. Like I do on literally every single one of these streams and off stream and pretty much all day, every day that I'm not doing something, physically demanding. Like in my free time, I fucking read. I just read. Jefferson's political actions, his support of the Furneaux's National Gazette, and his attempts to undermine Hamilton nearly led Washington to dismiss him from the cabinet. But he ultimately resigned his position in December 1793, and Washington forsook him. The feud led to the well-defined Federalist and Republican parties, and the party affiliation became necessary for the election to Congress by 1794. Washington remained aloof from congressional attacks on Hamilton, but did not publicly protect him. The Hamilton-Reynolds sex scandal opened Hamilton to disgrace, but Washington continued to hold him in very high esteem. Oh shit. Oh shit. We got a Bill Clinton. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. In March 1791, at Hamilton's urging, with support from Madison, Congress imposed an excise tax on distilled spirits to help curtail the national debt, which took effect in July. Grain farmers strongly protested in Pennsylvania's frontier districts. They argued that they were unrepresented and were shouldering too much of the debt, comparing their situation to British taxation pre-revolution. You agree people now don't think and they don't see why things were done the way they were? Literally. Not even kidding. On August 2nd, Washington assembled his cabinet to discuss the situation. Unlike Washington, who had reservations about using force, Hamilton was eager to suppress the rebellion with federal authority. Wanting to avoid involving the federal government, Washington first called on Pennsylvania state officials to take the initiative, but they declined. On August 7th, Washington issued his first proclamation for calling up state militias. After appealing for peace, he reminded the protesters that unlike the rule of the British Crown, the federal law was issued by state-elected representatives. Threats of violence against tax collectors, however, escalated into defiance against federal authority on 1794 and gave rise to the Whiskey Rebellion. Shit. Not the Whiskey Rebellion. Washington issued a final proclamation on September 25th threatening the use of military force to no avail. The federal army was not up to the task, so Washington invoked the Militia Act of 1792 to summon state militias. Governors sent troops, initially commanded by Washington, who had handed over command to Henry Lee, to lead them into the rebellious districts. They took 150 prisoners, and the remaining rebels dispersed. 2 of the prisoners were condemned to death, but Washington exercised his constitutional authority for the first time and pardoned them. Dang. Washington's forceful action demonstrated that the new government could protect itself and its tax collectors. This represented the first use of federal military force against the states and citizens. Washington justified his action against certain self-created societies, which he regarded as subversive organizations, or, like Chaz and Chop. Just throwing that out there. It's not like we haven't had our own autonomous fucking zones. Ugh. That threatened the national union. He did not dispute their right to protest, but he insisted that their dissent must not violate federal law. Congress agreed and extended their congratulations to him. Only Madison and Jefferson expressed indifference. Yeah, fuck you liberals. Go Washington, no kidding. Shut down those fucking autonomous zones. Dang. In April 1792, the French Revolutionary Wars began between Britain and France, and Washington declared America's neutrality. The revolutionary government of France sent diplomat Edmund Charles Guéné to America, and he was welcomed with great enthusiasm. He created a network of new democratic republican societies promoting France's interests, but Washington denounced them and demanded that France recall Guéné. The National Assembly of France granted Washington honorary French citizenship on August 26, 1792, during the early stages of the French Revolution. That's hilarious. He's like, take back your fucking democratic shit. We don't need that kind of propaganda over here. This guy had like a W every day of his life. Hamilton formulated the Jay Treaty to normalize trade relations with Britain while removing them from Western forts, and also resolve financial debts remaining from the Revolution. Chief Justice John Jay acted as Washington's negotiator and signed the treaty on November 19, 1794. Critical Jeffersonians, however, supported France. Washington deliberated, then supported the treaty because it avoided war with Britain, but was disappointed that its provisions favored Britain. He mobilized public opinion and secured ratification in the Senate, but faced frequent public criticism. The British agreed to abandon their forts around Great Lakes, and the United States modified the boundary with Canada. The government liquidated numerous pre-revolution debts, and the British opened the British West Indies to the American trade. The treaty secured peace with Britain and a decade of prosperous trade. Jefferson claimed that it angered France and invited rather than avoided war. Relations with France deteriorated afterward, and 2 days before Washington's term ended, the French Directory declared the authority to seize American ships, leaving seceding President John Adams to prospective war. But we know, shortly after this, Napoleon comes and signs over and sells us what? That's right, the Louisiana Purchase. Shortly after this, not even that long. Not even that long after this, Napoleon's doing his fucking thing. During the fall of 1789, Washington had to contend with the British refusing to evacuate their forts in the northwest frontier in their concerted efforts to incite Indian tribes to attack American settlers. The northwest tribes under Miami Chief Little Turtle allied with British to resist American expansion and killed 1,500 settlers between 1783 and 1790. Damn it, with the fucking dyslexia every time. Washington declared that the government of the United States are determined that their administration of Indian affairs shall be directed entirely by the great principles of justice and humanity, and provided that the treaty should negotiate their land interests. The administration regarded powerful tribes as foreign nations, and Washington even smoked a peace pipe and drank wine with them at President's house in Philadelphia. Fuck yeah, he's getting fucking sloshed with the Indian fucking guys. He's just out here like, let's go, peace pipe. Let me hit that shit. Oh yeah. Oh, some good shit. That's some good shit right there, buddy. No way. Let's fucking go, dude. He made numerous attempts to conciliate them. He equated killing indigenous peoples with killing whites and sought to integrate them into European American culture. It's fucking hilarious. Oh my god. Ah, George Washington, man. Regarded powerful tribes as foreign nations. Washington even smoked a peace pipe and drank wine with them at the president's house in Philadelphia. That's fucking hilarious. Ah, fucking awesome. Man. Washington retired to Mount Vernon in March 1797 and devoted time to his plantations and other business interests. Plantation operations were only minimally profitable, and his lands in the West Piedmont were under Indian attacks and yielded little income. With squatters there refusing to pay rent, he attempted to sell these, but without success. He became even more committed Federalist. He vocally supported the Alien and Sedition Acts and convinced Federalist John Marshall to run for Congress to weaken the Jeffersonian hold in Virginia. Washington grew restless in retirement, prompted by tensions with France in continuation of the French Revolutionary Wars. French privateers began seizing American ships in 1798, and relations deteriorated with France and led to the Quasi-War. Washington wrote to Secretary of War James McHenry offering to organize President Adams' army. Adams nominated him for Lieutenant General commission on July 4th, 1798, and the position of Commander-in-Chief of the armies. Washington served as the commanding general from July 13, 1798 until his death 17 months later. He participated in planning for a provisional army, but he avoided involvement in details. In advising McHenry of potential officers for the army, he appeared to make a complete break with Jefferson's Democratic Republicans. You could as soon scrub the black more white as to change the principles of a professed Democrat, and that he will leave nothing unattempted to overturn the government of this country. Holy shit. Man, it's like Washington called that shit back in the day. Dang, you could as soon scrub the blackamoor white as to change the principles of a professed Democrat, and that he will leave nothing unattempted to overturn the government of this country. Dang. Washington delegated the active leadership of the army to Hamilton, a major general. No army invaded the United States during this period, and Washington did not assume a field command. Washington was known to be rich because of the well-known glorified facade of wealth and grandeur at Mount Vernon, but nearly all of his wealth was in the form of land and slaves rather than ready cash. To supplement his income, he erected a distillery for substantial whiskey production. He bought land parcels to spur development around new federal city named in his honor, and sold individual lots to middle-income investors rather than multiple lots to large investors, believing they would more likely to commit to making improvements. On December 12, 1799, Washington inspected his farms on horseback. He returned home late and had guests for dinner. Sitting down for the meal without changing his damp clothes from the inclement weather of the day, he had a sore throat the next day, but was well enough to mark trees for cutting. That evening, Washington complained of chest congestion. The next morning, however, he awoke to an inflamed throat and difficulty breathing. He ordered the state overseer, George Rawlins, to remove nearly a pint of his blood. Bloodletting was a common practice at the time. His family summoned Dr. James Craik, Gustavus Richard Brown, and Alicia C. Dick. A fourth doctor, William Thornton, arrived some hours after Washington died. Brown initially believed he had quinsy. Dick thought the condition was more serious, violent inflammation of the throat. They continued the process of bloodletting to approximately 5 pints, but Washington's condition deteriorated further. No shit. You just let out all that fucking blood. Dick proposed a tracheotomy, but the other physicians were not familiar with that procedure and disapproved. Washington instructed Brown and Dick to leave the room while he assured Craik, "Doctor, I die hard, but I am not afraid to go." Washington's death came more swiftly than expected. On his deathbed, out of fear of being entombed alive, he instructed his private secretary Tobias Lear to wait 3 days before his burial. According to Lear, Washington died between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. on December 14, 1799. With Martha seated at the foot of his bed, his last words were, "'Tis well," from his conversation with Lear about his burial. He was 67 years old when he died. 67. Congress immediately adjourned for the day upon news of Washington's death, and the Speaker's chair was shrouded in black the next morning. The funeral was held 4 days after his death on December 18th, 1799, at Mount Vernon, where his body was interred. Cavalry and foot soldiers led the procession, and 6 colonels served as pallbearers. Mount Vernon funeral service was restricted mostly to family and friends. Reverend Thomas Davis read the funeral service by the vault with a brief address, followed by the ceremony performed by members of Washington's Masonic Lodge in Alexandria, Virginia. Word of his death traveled slowly, but as it reached other regions of the nation, church bells rang in the cities and many businesses closed. Memorial processions were held in major cities of the United States. Martha wore a black mourning cape for 1 year, and she burned her correspondence with Washington to protect its privacy. Though 5 letters between the couple are known to have survived, 2 from Martha to George and 3 from him to her. The diagnosis of Washington's illness and the immediate cause of his death have been subjects of debate since his death, and to this day. The published account of Doctors Craik and Brown stated that his symptoms were consistent with synanche trachealis, a term then used to describe severe inflammation of the upper windpipe, including quinsy. Accusations of having persisted since Washington's death concerning medical malpractice. Modern medical authors, however, largely have concluded that he likely died from severe epiglottitis. Complicated by the treatments, including multiple doses of calomel, a purgative, and extensive bloodletting, which likely caused hypovolemic shock. Hypovolemic shock. What the fuck? Damn. And that's the end of it. You think there's 4 different Mount Vernons? I think it's Mount Vernon, Virginia. Pretty sure it's Mount Vernon, Virginia. Yeah, that completes the George Washington story. Completes it. And also completes the fucking random history mystery box. It's a last minute fucking toss up. I was like, chill stream? I don't know what the fuck I'm gonna do. In the event that fucking I'm sitting here talking to myself the whole time, I might as well just do something educational. So I decided to talk about George Washington, because fuck it, why not? Why not? He's a legend. He deserves the spotlight. So we give him the spotlight like a champion. Like a champ. But man, that took a while. Shit. Been live for 2 hours and 16 minutes. That's fucking crazy. Let's go. And equally, let's not go at the same time, because it's fucking 3 in the morning. And I have to get up for work. So unfortunately, you know, I'm gonna have to call it quits here for the night. That was fantastic. I see, in Illinois, Ohio, Washington, and New York. Huh. Well. I'm assuming it's on the East Coast. I don't know. I think I covered it in the beginning when his brother renamed it, because it was originally his older brother's. I'm awesome, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that. I appreciate it. But now it is time for me to head off for the night. Go to sleep. Wake up super fucking early in the morning. Probably get 4 to 5 hours of sleep. I don't know. We'll see. It depends. Depends on how soon I can fall asleep. Shit, man. Been having insomnia lately. Been a little under the weather, running a slight fever. Don't know what the hell's going on. It's been for like a week, but I'm fucking over it. I'm over it, damn it. Either way, I should be live tomorrow again. Normal time, 12:30, in between 12:30 and 1 a.m. Central Standard Time. I should be live with the beginning of the War of 1812. We're gonna get into that one, and then after that, I have to fucking... If Fredo's still listening, send me on Discord. Tell me what part of the Ottoman Empire you want me to go over, man. You said the Ottoman Empire, but there's a lot of Ottoman Empire shit. Do you have a specific war you want, or do you want me to just pick it? Because I could pick some shit too. But I'm curious if you want to know something specific. You'll see me tomorrow? Yeah, indeed you will. Indeed you will. Because I will be live tomorrow. Tomorrow is what? Or, well, today, I guess, technically. Technically, it's today. Well, no, it is tomorrow, because it's not until 12:30. Ha! Fuck it, I win. Every time. Let's go. Oh, just kidding. But the War of 1812 was fought by the United States and its allies against the United Kingdom and its allies in North America. It began when the United States declared war on Britain on 18th of June, 1812, although peace terms were agreed upon in the December of 1814 Treaty of Ghent. The war did not officially end until the peace treaty was ratified by the United States Congress on the 17th of February, 1815. But we will get into that tomorrow, and it will be legendary, and it will be fun, and it will be awesome. And Shane should be here because there is some war crimes. Can't get mad at that. Man, holy shit, my own thumbnail threw me off. I was like, what the hell is that? I wasn't ready for my own thumbnail. You're fucking kidding me. That thumbnail I threw together in like the last 30 seconds before I just, like, I had the go live button up, and I'm like, you know what? I should create a thumbnail for this. What the hell am I going to create? I'm like, well, it's just a random history thing. So I changed the title to fucking History Mystery Box and then made a fucking thumbnail last second. Like, shit. Terrible artist, but also equally hilarious that I threw myself off. Shit, that's fucking funny. Alright, maybe I do need some sleep. You know what? My time is up with you guys. You guys have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night. Wherever you're at in the world, enjoy your time. Because it may be limited. You never know. You might be walking down the street, and then your legs just spontaneously disappear. And as you fall down, you tilt slightly towards the road, and then you fall into the road, and well, we all know what happens from there. It's not a pretty sight. But it's possible. Even though the possibility is very slim, it's still possible. So, that being said, enjoy your time. 'Cause you never know what could happen and you don't want to become a speed bump. Until next time, everybody, much love. I am out.
Face to face, I found my pain beneath the lies and broken dreams. Lost the love I had in me. It tore me apart, fade away. I felt so lost, but I held on to what I had. For what it's worth, if you're feeling low, just know that you can. Yes, you can. There's life in love that you hold. Rise above and let it glow. Just know that it's never too late to make a change. Crash and burn, I found myself beneath the emptiness. Wanting more, I let it go. Holding on to love. Breaking through, I feel alive. For once in my life, I'ma live by the want to be all I can. Let the rest just crash and burn. Crash and burn. Oh, 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 let it crash and burn. This one for the person who feels alone. This one for the hero who has no home. This one for the one who lived for hope. Changing better days. Pick your head up, keep on fighting, living, loving. Make your mind up. If you want it, take it, fly away, soaring high above the clouds. Hear the voices calling out. Oh, you want love.
just wish he knew. I just wish he knew.